You are now live.
Thank you, Aisha. Welcome everyone to this evening's FBS Chat. Uh, Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Nick Perry is our guest this evening, and my co-host. Any of you who have been here before will know Gil, but in case you don't, it's Professor Gil Green from Columbus, Ohio.
Wow,
I know.
all the way.
Um, so, Nick, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
You registered social worker, approved mental health practitioner, assessing children and adults in mental health crisis. You're also a visiting lecturer at Brighton University. The list goes on. Um, I normally like to ask our guests what was their first interaction with the solution focused approach and kind of what difference it made, or so I know you were trained at Brief, so yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I kind of had my first experience of uh, solution-focused brief therapy from the Association of Psychological Therapies, which is a training organisation in England when I was working in London as a social worker. Um, and I went and I also at the same sort of time I went and started a family therapy training at what was then Kensington Consultation Centre. I did the first year of that and then got dragged into training as the last lot of approved social workers before the kind of the name changed under the Mental Health Act to approved mental health professional. Um, and then I moved out of London, came down to live in Hastings, which is where I still live, and was involved in what was then a kind of integrated crisis team, and 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 got very immersed in that, uh, and although the kind of systemic thinking was very useful, I didn't go on and do further training at that point. It was only after I'd sort of become a senior practitioner social worker around about 2010, 2011, and I started supervising people that I came back into contact with solution focused practice because I was looking for some help really to learn how to supervise very experienced colleagues
Mm.
who were much longer qualified than I was, and I didn't always feel super equipped to supervise them. And Harvey Ratner was giving a solution-focused supervision course at the time. This is around about 2014, and I went and I applied for the training. Or for the money to do the training, and I got it from my employer, and I went and I did the 2 days in London, and it was just so inspirational. And so that was my first contact with brief, really,
Mm.
and a reconnection with solution focused practice. And then it was in the sort of the aftermath of the pandemic when those of us working in mental health crisis across disciplines had quite a tough gig,
Mm.
working when lots of people were shielding and working with people who had COVID when they were also experiencing mental health crisis, and doing lots of assessments with not many colleagues around, getting quite burnt out. And I
Mm.
said, I got to the point where I was thinking, actually, do you know what? I've had enough of this. I've been doing it X number of years. I know it's an important role, but I can't keep doing it at this pace. And I said to my boss, I think I've had it. And she said, well, look, lovely, lovely manager, Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. She said, well, look, can you if I can send you on some training that's going to help your spirit, let me see if I
Mm.
can do it. So I looked around and I thought, actually, do you know what? Because in our situation, and I don't know if I can say online with the NHS being so broken, and resources being so stretched, that actually it's really important to feel like you've got the wherewithal to be an intervention in yourself. And I felt like it was important to have some skills in my pocket to be able to make my role as approved mental health professional. So Gil, I don't know if you know, in England and Wales, we have this role where somebody who is very unwell might have to go to hospital in their mental health crisis. They don't necessarily agree, they might not necessarily want to, but the risks are such that we have to make that kind of a decision. There's usually a requirement for a specially approved doctor, and hopefully a doctor with some previous knowledge of the person, and then an independent person who's taking this role, and that's the role that I take. It used to be a social work only role, but since 2007 you can be a variety of different professions but not a doctor.
And so approved mental health practitioner, is that like a broad umbrella?
That's the name within the legislation that's given for this independent role, where you're supposed to scrutinize what's going on and try and come up with the least restrictive way of helping somebody in that crisis. Anyway, so just to finish the story, I thought I need something to help me to make the most of the time with the people that I've got before the doctors arrive, to try and engage with somebody and make it a useful conversation for them. And that's how I got hooked into the online certificate in solution focused practice with Brief. I went on and did the advanced certificate, and now I'm accredited with the UK ASFP. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question. I'm sorry about that, but that's how it happened.
But still very interesting. So initially it was a course on supervision.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you were at a point where you think, oh, I can't cope with this anymore, I need to leave. And then your boss, bless her, was it Jenny?
Jenny, thank you, Jenny.
Jenny came up with, go on some more training. So then you went back to Brief, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What was it about that second visit that made you want to carry on?
Well, I've always enjoyed learning that's experiential learning. It's helpful to read, and I enjoy reading when I'm not too tired and sleepy. But experiential learning, I always find the most enjoyable and interesting training and learning that I can do. And the Brief course was very experiential, so we did it all online. I mean, that was one of the things that was the kind of an unexpected byproduct, if you like, of the pandemic, was that lots of training that had otherwise been unobtainable for me, and I wouldn't have been able to be released one day a week to go up to London from my base, went online, and then it became possible in a way that it hadn't been before. So that was it was an opportunity for me to spend a day a week refreshing my skills and taking a different approach to it. And what kept me going with it, the question was, it was because I found it really tricky to apply it in my practice. It's not my role. I'm not seeing somebody for therapy, and I loved the approach, and I just wanted to see it work to the best of the possibilities in my scenario. And I was a little bit like a dog with a bone with it. And I would say to Chris Iveson and Evan George, bless them for their kindness, not rolling their eyes at me when I put my hand up for the nth number of time. Well, how's it going to work when I have to do this? And how's it going to work when I have to do that? And what about when somebody's psychotic? What about then? You know, and what about when they can't answer the best hopes? And all of these things that were going through my mind, just because I loved the approach so much and I wanted it. I could see how it could create a much more person-centered and power-aware intervention. So I just wanted to keep trying. So and then you get into a habit of it. So that's what's kept me going with it, really.
Okay.
What approaches were you using before you came to solution focus?
Well, I mean, I think I would say I was aware of systemic theory, and very much was working from a set of social work values which had anti-oppressive practice at its core, wanting to respect people's stories and trauma and experience. That was always true. Our training as approved mental health professionals historically has been very legal. You know, there's a legal lens on the training, the qualifying training, because you're supposed to be the expert on the law to be able to tell the other professionals, you know, the limits of their powers and duties, and to try to ensure, as I've said, the least restrictive possible intervention. So the training has been very, very legal, and for those of us that are social workers, because you can be an OT, you can be a psychologist, you can be a social worker, but not a medic. You know, our professional training has been augmented by this legal training, but there isn't any. And this has been part and parcel of my work, really, since doing the training with Brief, is to lobby wherever I can, with whatever skills I've got, to include communicative practice, you know, therapeutic communication skills within this training. And I've just started to work with Social Work England in the hope, as one of their inspectors for higher education institutions offering this AMP training, just to try to see if it's possible to talk with universities about how they could introduce more of a focus on therapeutic communication skills.
Wow. See, you said earlier that part of that role is not seeing someone for therapy. So what? Because I'm a bit thick, Nick. So in terms of, so you've got I guess psychotherapist working with a patient. Where would your role come in? What was the non-therapeutic side of it, apart from the legal side?
Well, I mean, effectively, the role of the AMP is to coordinate the professionals that are needed to provide an assessment of somebody in relation to the Mental Health Act and their possible need for detention to hospital. What people, you know, in the vernacular call sectioning, you know, somebody's being sectioned. And so you know, there is there's a debate at the minute within our professional world about at what point an assessment starts. You know, I think there's been a kind of an acculturated acceptance over a long time that a Mental Health Act assessment is an AMP and 2 doctors. There's actually quite a lot of thought at the minute around the fact that the legal duty for an AMP is to consider on behalf of a local authority whether or not you would be willing to complete an application for detention for somebody. So actually the assessment starts when you as the AMP get involved. And there's encouragement within the Code of Practice for the Mental Health Act to say that you should always spend time alone with somebody, so that they've got the opportunity, because you're there as a kind of hopefully an advocate, a support, somebody who's independent to the medical model, providing an alternative view, and that's the kind of the time alone bit is something in our practice that is encouraged by the code, but because of the pressures of the real world, often colleagues haven't had the time or the drive to create, and then you get 3 professionals arriving at once, then to assess somebody, which is a very different experience for someone like me, having arrived first of all, to explain what's going on, to ask if anybody needs a particular support in the conversations, to ask them what their best hopes are for the outcome, and even if we had to have a talk that they didn't really want to be having because they were somewhere under compulsion, how they might think even a couple of weeks later that actually it was quite useful talking to Nick. And I understand now why what happened a bit more. So yeah, I don't know, I feel like I'm waffling. Am I making sense?
No.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how the doctors, the professionals, took your role. Was there barriers there, or
In the new approach, do you mean, when I started working from a solution focused point of view? Not really. I mean, what I found interesting in reflecting about using the role in AMP work is that often the referrals that we get are the history of the problem, right? You know, there's all these reasons to be worried about such a body. There's all these risks that you need to consider, and to be able to arrive 40 minutes before anyone else, and sit and have a conversation about a history of capability, and what somebody's best hopes might be for the whole legal process, and how they would know that even though it was a difficult time, it had ended up being useful to them. All that information, that new information, is really important for the doctors as they come in, and they've got their own training. You know, the medical model training does tend to be pretty problem focused, but if they've had a briefing beforehand that gives a picture of somebody with strengths, and a network and people that love them, and things that they've done well, and things that they've been trying to do even before they got here in this crisis moment, it creates a different sort of balance, and a different sort of experience for the. And I suppose even though I have to let other colleagues ask questions in the way that they're trained to do, I can certainly add into a conversation that they're having with the person some of the things that I've learned beforehand about their strengths, and balance out some of the comments that might come across as a little bit negative or critical about their actions. So doctors, I think, have been, in some ways, it's given them more information on which to make their own judgments. So I think they've been quite open to it, really.
Good.
I hate to ask this. I do. I hate to ask this question. It's so solution focused, but and that's under those circumstances. What difference do you think it makes asking solution focused questions, identifying best hopes, competencies, strengths, compared to a non-solution, if you weren't using a solution focused approach?
I think I've got Chris Owson in my mind as I give this answer, but I think it gives people the opportunity to say things out loud that they might not have said to themselves yet,
Okay. I like it. Yeah.
about what's difficult, what someone might need support with, what they're scared about, what they've tried to do, what has helped in the past, what might be helpful as part of going forward, and in a way that perhaps if they've said it with me, then they can say it again with doctors, and that kind of changes the power balance a little bit for people, because out of all of us, probably the doctors have the most professional power, but and sometimes people in these sorts of times can just clam up a little bit because of the gravity of the situation they're in, and the whole environment thing, and the opportunity to practice what they think and to say what they want, I think it makes a huge difference.
It's really interesting because, like you say, that there's the medical model. So let's look at the underlying causes, what's led to this, what your capabilities are. Your conversation seems to be quite different, and I guess the people that you spoke to, were they used to being asked those sorts of questions? How did it come across to them?
No, I don't think. I don't think they were, and I don't think I was used to asking them at the beginning either. So it's been a whole process of trying to learn how to use it in my particular little corner of mental health practice, and to be able to. This is an Evan George phrase that is stuck in my head. Twin track the statutory role and the solution focused conversation. So I might have to say, look, I know you don't want to be here. You've been brought here by the police, perhaps, to a place of safety because they're worried about you. And my role as an approved mental health professional is to convene this assessment that you have a right to under the law. But I've come early because I want to try and have this conversation in a way that can be useful to you, so that when you look back on it, you might have the possibility of thinking, oh yeah, no, I'm glad we had that talk and it did end up being useful. And so that's the way that I have to try to balance the two roles, because I have to be honest about what I'm there to do and the decisions that are within my power, and the assessments that we're going to have to make about risks to the person and perhaps to other people. But you, such a body, have the opportunity to be a partner in this process. If we can find a way of talking together that ends up being useful.
What is the setting for these kinds of conversations, these meetings?
Yeah, it can be a whole host of places, Gil. I mean, so it could be somebody might have been brought to a designated health system place of safety, which is secure, by police, who've met somebody in the community and are worried about their mental state and feel like they need an assessment of their mental health. So it could be in a place like that. We don't, in my opinion, have enough of those places. So often police colleagues will take people to accident and emergency, which is ED. We'll have assessments there. We have assessments in medical hospitals because people have got combined physical and mental health needs, and or there aren't enough mental health beds, so somebody's in a medical bed first of all. It might be in somebody's home in the community. It might be in a prison. It might be in police custody. It could be a whole host of different environments.
Wow.
So the process is then you're called in or you're contacted to come to one of these locations because there's somebody there who needs to be this assessment. You get there like 40 minutes early, but then the law mandates two doctors to also.
Well, to be honest, there is a bit of flexibility for people like me. There's no specified time frame for me, so I can choose the timings of what happens, and I can also choose who I invite. So it's not always the case that I invite doctors. Sometimes I will invite somebody's, what we might call in our system, a lead practitioner, what might used to have been called a care coordinator, somebody that might be from a nursing background or a different sort of background who knows this person quite well if they're known to services. And we can see in that conversation between us whether or not we can avoid compulsory admission to hospital. I might sometimes just ask one doctor to come first of all, just to try and make it less of a formal experience, less perhaps of a scary experience. Particularly if I can take a nice doctor who I know is nice and is going to be gentle. And that,
Having said this, in any doctors you work with in the future see this, they're going to know that if you contact them, you think they're nice.
exactly. That's it. That's it. That's it. And all the others were just unavailable at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So it's within our gift to decide who forms part of the assessment, but the law stipulates that if somebody's going to be going to hospital compulsorily, then there needs to be two medical recommendations. One from a specialist psychiatrist, and another from a registered medical practitioner who knows the person, who has previous acquaintance. And then ultimately the decision as to whether or not that person goes to hospital under section falls with the approved mental health professional. Is the non-medical scrutineer that makes the final decision.
Okay.
How long does a process like this typically take?
Well, that is also, it's not easy to answer, in the sense that it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, because it depends on the individual circumstances, where they are, how quickly perhaps if they need to come into hospital, how quickly a bed can be made available, what has to happen in the interim as a contingency if they're not able to come in straight away. There's all sorts of variables that that determine the length of the process, really. But for an urgent, I mean, and my service isn't considered to be a blue light emergency service. We don't have set, absolute set in stone timeframes to respond. But for urgent situations, we will consider the person's situation the same day as getting the referral. Often we will try and go and see the person face to face as quickly as we can to see what's going on, where it's safe to do so for everybody. And then it's a question of, if it's going to require medical examinations, arranging doctors to come, and sometimes that can be on the same day, can be within a matter of hours. But the outcomes of the assessment can be much more protracted than that because of resource issues.
Yeah. Nick, twin tracking.
Yeah.
How useful has twin tracking been? Because I kind of get it in the sense that you've got one person's idea of what a good outcome would be and what your idea of a good outcome would be, and kind of where they meet in the middle. Is that kind of?
Yeah, I mean, you might end up having conversations that go something like, we might want to be talking about an outcome that suits you, but also suits me as someone who has a duty of care for you, and also suits your mum, and having different person perspectives on what the outcome might be, because at the end of the day we have to make a judgment on risk, in a situation when somebody might even not have the mental capacity to make a judgment for themselves about their own safety. Um, so so in that sense there are similarities. I mean, I've been very privileged to work with Guy Shannon over the course of this year, doing a project over the summer where I was able to co-train 3 cohorts of approved mental health professionals from different parts of the country with Guy, using solution focused practice for their AMP work. And in our talking about it, Guy devising this training, which we did over a sort of 5 or 6 week period, he talked to me a bit about his recollections of signs of safety, which is a child protection oriented way of using solution focused practice that I think came out of Australia maybe in the 90s. And there are similarities, I think, from the child protection statutory role and the the mental health crisis statutory role, in the way that we try to negotiate a good outcome from somebody's point of view, but also takes into account the opinions of other parties.
Yeah. And I guess it's the way that's delivered, because we know we can't force people into change, but it's almost like offering it up. This could be,
Yeah, and also being honest about being a decision maker as well, because at the end of the day, I might have to make a decision that they don't like or don't agree with.
Yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like you have many situations where you are talking with the client together with the other mental health professional representing the medical model, that so that the interview happens with you and another professional and the client, and so you are in that process using solution focused questions or working them in. Is that right? Kind of working into the conversation?
Where it's possible to do it, I will. What I tend to find easier to do is to have the time alone with somebody, and to have a solution focused conversation in that time alone before the multidisciplinary interview.
Okay.
Because doctors have their time frame, the questions they want to ask, their the way that they do things, and it's not always possible for me to be able to, although I will chair that multidisciplinary interview, I can't get the doctors to ask solution focused questions if they don't know how to ask them.
Right.
So so they still have to go through their own process. And as I said before, I try to balance whatever information they derive with some of the information that I've obtained from the time alone beforehand.
Yeah.
And in that way, I try to introduce solution focused practice derived information into the joint interview. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a picture of what this would look like. And in so doing, also, hopefully anybody who watches this video later gets an idea how that process, how you work in the solution focused approach and within the legally required process.
And in terms of the writing that I've been able to do about the joining of the approach with my statutory role, in that time alone, that 40 minutes an hour that we have, it's often been possible to have a conversation in quite a classically brief way, where you'd ask about best hopes, you'd go on to describe a life containing the preferred future. You'd be able to scale someone's proximity to best hopes being lived out to before we'd had this conversation, and then one up the scale, and in crisis often only half a point up the scale, and get a wealth of detailed information about previous capability and hopes and strengths and a network and ideas about how to take things forward, lots of things that are useful to be able to then talk to doctors about.
Yeah.
Do
You,
obviously with, oh,
go on.
without giving any names, but is there a recent case that stands out for you when you look back on it and think that was the best it could have gone?
Yeah, there are loads. There, there's not just one that comes to mind. I mean, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've kept a little diary of anonymized diary of occasions when I've been able to use solution focused practice in a way that I thought ended up being useful. And maybe there are 30 or 40 entries in my diary at the minute. And that's not to say that there's only 30 or 40 occasions when I've used it, but 30 or 40 memorable ones when something's happened in a way that has touched me, touched my heart, and hopefully been useful to somebody. I mean, I won't go into too much detail, but one of the case studies in my chapter and forgive the plug, the book that will be coming out in the early summer.
And what is the title of this book?
So the title of the book is Solution Focused Practice and Mental Health Crisis: Inclusive Support Towards Safety and Hope.
All right.
Wow.
And one, it's a collection of chapters from different authors, a lot of whom, if not all of whom, have experience of working with people in mental health crisis from different professional backgrounds in different physical environments of acute care. But my chapter is about the role of the AMP, the Approved Mental Health Professional, and one of the key issues for us as AMPs over the last 40 years is the overrepresentation of Black and minority ethnic people in the statistics of compulsory admission. And we've known about the disproportionate number of people being detained from racialized communities, and we haven't seemingly been able to do anything about it significantly. And one of the things that perhaps I'm most proud of, let's say, Joe, in terms of using this approach, is being able to enable people of color to have a voice in the process that is supported by solution focused practice, and that is amplified by the experience of asking solution focused questions, being able to take account of previous experiences of racism within institutionally racist services within our country, and to make decisions about compulsory admission that are least restrictive, and take account of people's distress and anger and violence in the context of being contained by services that have got histories of institutional racism, and make different decisions. So, one of the case studies in my chapter is about work with a young man of mixed heritage who presented as very mentally unwell in police custody, and was on the way to being detained to hospital compulsorily, but with some time and with the opportunity to use solution focused questions, we were able to not only talk about best hopes and preferred future, but for him to have the sufficient trust in my intervention to be able to talk about his experience of racism and how that translated into his presentation earlier in the police station, for us within sort of 24 36 hours to be able to make a different decision and enable him to go home with a level of support which was much more proportionate. So, I think solution focused practice has an enormous amount to offer in mental health crisis, for all sorts of different reasons. And I don't think we can underestimate how powerful that can be, both for people on the end of the questions, but also for us as practitioners. And one of the chapters in the book that is to come out early summer, from Anya Garvey, is about the well-being benefits for professionals of using this approach. And I think it's not just about more person-centered anti-oppressive interventions that we can offer to the people that we meet in the line of our duties, but also the kind of the vicarious resilience that we can obtain as professionals. That the Gil might know the Bioback study of the child protection social workers in Tenerife, about how using this approach has helped them to become more resilient, and to have a greater sense of well-being in the work that they do. So I think it's both, and it's important for the people that we have the privilege of working with in times of crisis, but also for us in our sustainability as professionals.
Yes. So what you're saying, that it's using a solution focused approach can be a protective factor in preventing burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
I came across that study. I recently co-edited a book that came out the end of October on using a solution focused approach in healthcare coaching with a couple of people in Toronto, Canada. One of the chapters I edited was written by a nurse in a pediatric psychopharmacology clinic. And she talks about burning out until she discovered the solution focused approach. So in helping edit that chapter with her, I came to pull together some literature on burnout. And there's 2 or 3 other articles that deal with kind of burnout, solution focused approach as a protective factor in burnout.
absolutely right. And I don't think that the importance of that can be underestimated at the moment for health and social care professionals in our country and further afield, because times are tough. Times are tough.
Because in terms of solution focused as an intervention, because when we look at all the statistics in terms of prison population, children excluded from mainstream education, whatever, it's overly represented from the ethnic minorities. What is it about this approach that makes it culturally competent, whatever the phrase is at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so educative, this process of the writing the book with my co-authors, because I know enough now to be able to say that solution focused practice isn't a panacea for all of these long-standing discriminations in our society, in our culture. But there is something about having the person you're talking to as an expert on their life, and taking a not knowing point of view, and being able to ask questions that draw out the strengths of the person and the strengths of their network, that predispose the information that you're deriving to be information that acknowledges the the acknowledges the expertise of the person on themselves and their situation. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but
No.
the I wouldn't I hesitate to use the phrase culturally competent, because I think that there's an extent to which that suggests that we might know about somebody's culture sufficient to be able to be useful to them. And perhaps I might know a bit about somebody's culture as a kind of middle class white guy who's kind of interested in difference, and I might, but that's not the point. The point is prioritizing and giving a platform for the person to talk about their own expertise on themselves and their community, and to ask questions that result in answers about capability and support and what that looks like that I would never come up with in a million years. So I think that's the way it's helpful, and it supports. Although my professional training is social work, and my social work values are dear to me, and that includes an anti-racist approach to my work. Solution focused practice, it supports that, but it doesn't deliver it on its own. It supports somebody being able to speak out these answers about what they need and who can help and what has helped in the past that I won't ever know about.
And also, regardless of ethnicity, it's still that uniqueness, that expertise of that person, because they're still unique even amongst us. I love the way you explain that. Thank you, Nick. That was good.
One of the things that I found quite interesting, I mean, I'm always wrestling with how to try to apply this approach in my work, and one of the things that I talk about at the end of the book is that I think we still have to continue to practice to know how to ask the questions. And of course, solution focused questions get asked in a zillion different languages across the world, right? It started off as a kind of an English speaking therapy, but it's obviously no longer an English speaking therapy. But I do think there are ways in which, so for example, I ended up assessing a young person who was born deaf and signs. And not only is there a need for a British Sign Language interpreter, but there's also a need for relay interpreters. So that's deaf people who will sign to a British Sign Language interpreter who will interpret to me. And a lot of the way that we've been acculturated to ask solution-focused questions in English doesn't really work in British Sign Language, or the way that it's interpreted, because the syntax is completely different. And so it would take the expertise of a group of people to be able to develop a way of using solution focused, probably relay interpreters to be able to develop a way of using solution focused for the deaf community in a way that I haven't been able to do yet. So there's still work to do, right?
Sounds like a future writing project.
Well, I mean, it's on the list, Gil. There's loads.
Gil's always pressuring people to write stuff. He loves people to write stuff, and I think it's great.
It's not pressure, it's support.
Yeah,
I'm a cheerleader.
It's manipulation, Nick. It's very simple. Let's call it what it is.
I was going to say the word is manipulation, because if you say I'm not doing it, he knows exactly what to say to make you do it.
Oh, well, there is that one for example.
Yeah.
So, what is the? Oh, sorry. Go on. Ash.
No, go on, Joe.
No, I was going to ask Nick what was the title of the book, when it's coming out? And
so again, title of the book: Solution Focused Practice in Mental Health Crisis, Inclusive Support Towards Safety and Hope. That's the kind of the subtitle.
Where will we be able to buy this, Nick?
This is being published by Routledge.
Right. Yeah.
And it's going to be available, I hope, in the early summer. We've got a host of new and old names from kind of the solution focused world. I've been I was saying to Aisha before we started, I've just been trying to get to grips with LinkedIn and learn how to use that a little bit to talk about work and to talk about this forthcoming book. And I've started to introduce the chapters one by one on LinkedIn. So if anybody's listening that's interested, you can go and it's like a Netflix series, you know. I'm just trying to release these nuggets of information bit by bit, you know, to catch people's attention and to whet their appetite, really. But we've got some interesting chapters, and we've got a chapter on the research base from Lauren Jerome. We've got a chapter on solution focused practice and trauma from Adam Fruhrer. Guy Shannon's talking about using the approach moment by moment, not just in a kind of classical therapy room structure sort of way, but you know, knowing how to just ask solution focused questions in a useful way, in a timely way within an intervention. Evan George talks about the history of solution focused practice in the UK and what's next for it in terms of mental health crisis work. We've got Rose McCabe and the City St George's team talking about their studies, their RCT, randomized control trial studies of solution focused practice in emergency departments and what training people might need to go and to use the approach in this way. Mark Kilby and Raya Gul talking about service users using solution focused practice. Natasha Adams talking about using it with young people and kind of molding CAM services around the approach. Luke Goldie McSorley talking about using the approach with young people in kind of an edge of care, statutory children's social work context. We've got Emma Burns talking about it from a policing point of view. We've got my colleague Nectarios Kourakis, who's a psychiatrist, talking about his use of it in psychiatry. Michelle Orr is going to look at suicide prevention from a mental health nursing point of view. I'm going to talk about the Mental Health Act, and Anya Garvey is going to talk about the impact on professionals' well-being. So I'm just going to have a little look. I hope I've not missed anybody out, but I don't think.
Is that all?
Is that it?
Example,
Is that
yeah,
it, Nick?
that's
Come
it.
on, you can do
That's
better
it.
than
But
that.
the
Right.
truth, the truth is, we haven't covered everything, you know, and there's more. There's more to do, and there's things that we haven't managed to cover. But my best hope for the book was that it will show that there's the possibility of solution focused practice being a common language between different professionals of different professional training backgrounds, and often there are different professional cultures that can sometimes find it, it can sometimes feel difficult to always to deliver a very person-centered experience for people because of that and the way that these professional interactions happen in environments of acute care. But if we all know a common language, then perhaps that can end up being a better outcome for people.
That was an amazing list. Wow.
Yeah.
So we'll look out for it in the summer.
Yeah, please do. Please
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
And
definitely.
you know, Christmas presents for people. What? Well, however, you know,
Well,
and
if it's coming out early in the summer, then it'd make great beach reading for the
exactly
summer.
right. Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, our hope is that, you know, I started off with the hope that this would be a very much, you know, I think I talked about experiential learning earlier on, and you know, um, I, I, ha- I had it on my heart that it would be a book of practice stories for people who are working in these environments. But I've ended up hoping that it might be read by you know, NHS and local authority leaders who are responsible for the way that their departments operate and the models from which they work. And I really hope at a time of change within the health and social care landscape in the UK that the book can speak to that really, and policymakers and decision makers will think about the benefits not only in terms of brief interventions in efficiency and person-centered experience and anti-racist practice, and well-being and burnout related stuff for professionals, and think actually, you know, maybe we should look at this more closely as a way of working.
100%.
Can I
So how
just
did you?
quickly jump
I was
in?
gonna,
Joe, can I
yeah,
just, sorry, because
yeah.
Christopher Munt has been waiting very patiently, and I'm just going to put up, sorry. So Christopher, I have been a supporter of SF for some years now. My only caveat is that mental health, some patient service users are medicated to a point where their function and faculties have become blunted. Then goes on to ask, Nick, I wonder what your views are on the recent pilot of utilising open dialogues in some of the mental health trusts in London, which has extended to its usefulness in assessments.
Well, I'm a great big supporter of open dialogue. When I did my training at Kensington Consultation Centre, I had the privilege of hearing Jaakko Sakola speak, who is a Finnish psychologist. I think he might be a psychiatrist. I can't remember, but it was very you know, figural in the whole open dialogue movement. I think solution focused practice and open dialogue are cousins. Dialogical approaches are cousins, but in my experience of open dialogue, it needs to be used in a much more planned way. The reason I advocate solution-focused practice in mental health crisis is because you can, you know, if you have 10 minutes with somebody, you can use the questions and hopefully, you know, referring to Joe and Aisha's paper, even if they don't even answer, something can that can be going on afterwards. They've got a question that's stuck with them that might end up being useful to them. So that's the way that I think they connect. I think they're cousins, but I think we can use solution-focused practice much more flexibly and readily in environments of mental health crisis.
I
Thank
agree.
you for
That's one
that.
of the
Right.
things I like about solution focus is that it's person centered. It's not directed, but yet it's structured. There's a structure to it.
Yeah, yeah. And even not only is there a structure, but it can also be used in unplanned ways without the structure.
Oh
You know,
yes.
you can ask a scaling question that ends up being useful.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
It's a way of thinking. Once you've
Yeah.
internalized it, it's a way of thinking, way of perceiving the world.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the hour's already come up, guys. So I was going to say any very, very quick last questions, Joe.
Well, they weren't quick. I was going to ask something else. Never mind.
Well, you don't need to get
Yeah.
all sad
I'm
about
going to
it.
stop.
Go for it.
No, just how did you get this array of stars all together to write this one book? That was all it was. That was maybe brief.
I think I just somehow I just knew they'd say yes.
There you go.
I think it was just an intuition that I kind of had a sense of how the book might fit together, and some of the people that I'd had a contact with already, and others I hadn't necessarily, but people have been very generous in the support of the project, and I thought they would say yes.
There you go. What was you going to
Well,
say?
and you got the publisher to agree to that as well. That to say yes. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nick's the guy to know with things like this, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
been a massive learning curve for me, for sure. I mean, I've never done anything like this before. But what I realised, and I say in the introduction of the book, is I realised that the role of the approved mental health professional and the role of an editor isn't that different, because you're asking people to come to a certain thing at a certain time, having read certain things, and be part of a helpful outcome. And I thought I realised that there were similarities between the two. So.
Brilliant.
I think it's
Is
a
there
great
anything
work
you
that
haven't
you are
asked?
doing.
We haven't asked you yet, Nick. That in like a minute you can respond to.
Oh well, I think you've given me a good old going over for sure. And I feel like I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk a bit about the work. I feel like once you get me going, I could go on for another few hours yet. There's so much I think this approach can offer to us working in the fields that I know that Aisha and Joe work in, and that I've been working in, and I've been really pleased to be able to talk about the approach with other AMPs across the country, and I do think that as a last thing for me to say, I think there's scope for this approach to really become embedded in the way that we do our statutory role, with a little bit of luck and a fair wind.
Yeah. Oh, we keep our fingers crossed, Nick. We keep our fingers crossed.
Toes, please. Toes as well.
I would guess I would surmise that putting that book together and getting it out, it will be a very important piece of embedding it, making it more of a part of the routine practice, mental health practice. But getting something in writing like that and published, I think, is a critical piece of that process.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will be a real platform for other things. Say again, Joe.
I don't think we've managed to say it, Nick, but you're also lecturer at Brighton University, right? So
so I teach on the AMP program there. So the kind of the qualifying training for the role that I do, I teach. I offer some teaching at Brighton. So yeah, they're getting their fair share of solution focused practice as well.
Wicked. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Very good.
Well, we have come to the end. We've passed the end. I don't know what time it is now, but Any last words? And that does not mean to ask a question.
It's
Any
not
last words for for Nick? Let's start with you, Gil.
It's been great getting to know you today, meeting you, and hearing your story and your experience. You're doing really sounds like groundbreaking work, especially in the UK, and really enjoyed hearing your story. So you made our job today a lot easier by telling your story so well
Oh,
about
thank you. It's
solution
lovely to meet you
focus.
guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And echo what you said at the end there, Nick. Hopefully, we can start spreading the news through social care, through the NHS, through all these organisations that have months and months and months of waiting lists. Let's see what we can do with that.
For sure.
But yeah, thanks, mate. You've been a pleasure to talk to. It's been really, really nice. Thank you.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
you're more than welcome. Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
And Nick, from me, it has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot about you today. We haven't actually ever spoken before, other than through some
No.
words on LinkedIn here and there. And it was just
Yeah.
straight, yeah, Nick, you're joining us. I don't even think I asked. I just said you are.
No,
So yeah, it's been absolutely brilliant.
no, it's lovely. It's been a pleasure. It really has. Anybody called Aisha, my daughter's called Aisha, so anybody called Aisha, you know, I'd do anything for.
What could go wrong?
Exactly right.
They're both
Well, for
princesses, I'm
everybody.
sure.
Oh, here we go again with the princess thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm a princess. But they keep me like a princess. So what can I do?
That's it. That's it.
It's true though. They call me a princess, but then they treat me like one. I'm very spoiled, but I like it. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for the questions. Nick, you are absolutely amazing. Can I ask that the three of you just stay there for a couple of minutes so we can say goodbye behind the scenes? And for the rest of you, thank you for watching. And we will see you next time in FBS Chat.
Bye.
Bye.